I don't want no trouble. I just want to make pies. That's all I want to do, make pies.
I thought you weren't sleeping with your husband no more. He got her drunk one night.
I should never drink. I do stupid things when I drink, like sleep with my husband.
Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin Lundberg, and I'm here with Vanessa Mendel.
Hello.
We're going to start by doing an episode of Waitress, which was a, sleeper Sundance hit. Such a delightful movie starring Keri Russell, guys. If you haven't seen it lately, bring your teenage daughters into the room and just watch it over again. So great. Such a crazy story, Vanessa.
It's insane. And I actually didn't know until we were doing this episode the tragedy that was attached to the story. And it's
we won't
kind
spoil
of mind-blowing.
But it is insane. You could very quickly look it up on the internet. But in any event, it's a wild tale. It's a wonderful movie by the now deceased Adrienne Shelly. And this producer, Michael Roiff, is fantastic. And this was his first film ever. So it's so delightful to hear this story of how he got into the business with this movie and had such a breakout hit. So I can't wait to get going.
Me too. Let's do it.
So Michael Roiff, I actually can't wait to hear about the journey of the movie, but then the journey to Broadway, because that's such a rare, incredible thing that you achieved. I want you to start from the beginning as someone who was there at the very beginning and has carried it throughout. Tell me your first memory.
It's interesting because the first memory I have of this, it's sort of a rapid fire set of things. I raised some money to go to make a movie. This was it. This was going to be my first movie. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I had sort of raised a little bit of money from family friends and people I'd met while I was consulting, not very warm doors. It wasn't like I was raising it for a specific film. I was raising it for the concept of a film. And so I read 200 scripts and I usually say I hated all of them. There was actually one other one that I liked, but let's say I hated 198 of the 200 scripts.
And Michael, how did you get your hands on 200 scripts just coming into the business?
There was a wide array of ways. So I had friends who were assistants who were passing me scripts. I had friends who were other producers or who were writers, or the sort of hometown thing of like my son's brothers. There was a lot of that, which is probably why the relative quality of some of the scripts, varied. But then the best ones I received from a friend who had been in the industry for a while and said, this would be fun for me to sort of help you and shepherd this. And this seems great. And so he sent me, this guy, Jeff Rose, sent me Waitress. And so the first memory I have is this was back when I used to read a script the day I received it. I'm no longer capable of that. So I was in my little apartment and I got this script and I was like, oh, let me read this. And the very first page, Adrienne describes the opening title sequence, and there's chocolate pouring and there's mixing and there's bowls and it's Willy Wonka. And I remember just like walking into my kitchen with this thing as I'm reading it, dreaming of like who could be in it, thinking, yes, finally, you have this got me. I love this thing. And when I say there's sort of a rapid fire series of memories, I literally met with Adrienne the next morning.
What was it about it that struck you as so different from the other scripts you had been reading? What was it that you fell in love with?
That's a good question. And it's interesting because it's one of the things that I think I've kept as a producer. There are a lot of things where I was a better producer then than I am now. I was naive and I just anything was possible. And now you can't do that and this will never happen. But one of the things that has been a constant for me is because I grew up as a theater kid and I grew up acting and I grew up, performing, I always read any script as, well, what are the cool roles in this thing? Is there something that's awesome in this? Are these characters good? And I started to do that as a producer. As an actor, it was, well, what do I want to play, right? But as a producer, it was, what can I get someone great to play? We're not going to be able to pay them enough that they're just going to do this because it's, it's a paycheck. so how do we have something that is going to draw someone in? And so this script, I immediately was like, there is all of these roles. Like there is every single one of these roles.
Totally. They're all individualistic and amazing and so sweet and funny. Totally agree.
Anyway, the next morning I go and meet Adrienne, and she walks in with a baby and a husband. And the husband's looking a little, he's like
Worse for the wear.
skeptical of the whole thing. And I was like, oh my goodness, like what have I just read?
That is hilarious. So you were like, are you the husband? Okay, got it.
There was a moment in the meeting where I was like, what am I looking at right now? How do I navigate these orders quickly? Became clear to me that not everyone writes simply autobiographically.
So she could obviously write. She obviously spoke to you. What gave you the sense that she could direct this thing? And had you already made up your mind that this was something you wanted to do, or where were you?
Well, so it's interesting. I'd gotten my hands on one of the two movies that she had directed previously. It's funny because it seems like yesterday to me, and I am still working on Waitress nearly every day of my life. But it's like from it's a completely different time in the world where I couldn't just get the movies online. I had to like find a DVD somehow. And, so I watched one of the movies that night because, I didn't have a lot of turnaround time on that. And I liked it. And I was like, this is cool. It's interesting. It's weird and different. And there's a lot of quirk to it. And then this script felt to me like the logical kind of next step in terms of being more, I don't want to say mainstream, but having a broader appeal. And then when she talked about, we sat there and she was able to articulate her vision very clearly. And that was clear on the page too, to be honest. It's one of the things you asked, what did I like about the script? I mean, that probably should have been the other answer, which is it is so clear in that script what is going to happen at every moment that, I would never take anything away from Adrienne and suggest that you could just hand it to anyone and they'd direct it, but she had directed it on the page so clearly.
Everything's in there.
Like when we sold it to Searchlight, they were like, well, can you give us deleted scenes for and I was like, there are no deleted scenes. There's nothing. She knew exactly what she wanted at every moment. There's like, frames that are missing. That's it.
Okay. So you meet with her, you like her, you see her movie, you like it. What happens next?
What happens next was a lot of hurry up and wait. So I was like, I'm in. Tell me where do I go? How do we do this? Let's go make a movie.
And this was the first movie you'd ever produced. Like, how did you know what you were doing? Did anyone give you pointers? Like, what happened?
I didn't know what I was doing. And I came at it with the attitude of my job is to produce every single thing that Adrienne needs to make her vision a reality. And so up front, all right, I've got money. Now, how do I put together a cast and a crew? And there were things where I said, okay, I genuinely have no idea what I'm doing. So we originally partnered with someone who's still a good friend, Danielle Renfrew, who is a fantastic producer. And one thing led to another, and she ended up falling off the project early, sort of in the casting process. And I looked at her and I was like, Danielle, you can't leave. Like, if you leave, like, you are here because I do not know how this works. And she was like, you would be surprised. You know a lot more than you think you do. You're in better shape than I was when I made my first film. It gave me sort of the pep talk that you need. And, had already sort of, actually, I think it was concurrent with that. She was like, I want you to meet this line producer. I was like, who was your line producer on this film, Daltrey Calhoun? I was like, and so I met this guy, Todd King. And this was someone who really knew the nuts and bolts of line producing. I mean, nowadays I do my own budgeting. I'm so cheap that I end up doing so much of this myself. But back then I had no idea. And I remember sitting down with him. We did this initial budget, and I'm a young green producer. And I was like, oh, I have some notes and some questions about, and so like all these line items I'm asking about, and he like gave me, he's very nice and diplomatic, and so we change a few things. And then, over the course of time, those line items ended up being exactly what he said they were going to be because he knows what he's doing.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, so you start budgeting, you get a budget that you're comfortable with cash flowing. Tell me about your casting process, the crewing process. It's like it's going kind of smoothly. Like it's
very smoothly. We met Keri Russell fell in love with her. And we had a few meetings with, various actors. And I came to New York for a bunch of these. And Adrienne had this thing of like, I want you to be at the meeting, but I also want to have some alone time with these artists, so that I get to, see the vibe and everything. And I was like, of course. So like, I'll just let the agent know, like, we'll do 20 minutes with you or whatever. She's like, nah, don't worry about that. Just show up like 15 minutes late. And I was like, you want me to just appear like someone who doesn't show up on time? And she was like, yes, that's exactly what I want to have happen. And so that's how we did it. I just kept walking in like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was just so busy here. I hope you didn't see me sitting on the stoop as you walked past me to
That's
go.
hilarious. Oh my God. I love that.
It's funny. That's a story I hadn't thought of in a while, but I remember walking in sort of like disheveled to see Keri, and across Adrienne and I are, I guess, across the table from each other somehow, but we lock eyes and we're like, this is so obviously her. I don't know why we're even talking to anyone at this point. But we sort of, took our time for a second and wanted to go through the process. And Keri, like the next day, got cast in Mission Impossible 3.
No.
So they were like, she'd still love to do this, which was a win on its own, but it's like 6 months. You're going to have to hold for 6 months. And I was like, well, on the one hand,
The fact that she's going to star in Mission Impossible is good, right?
totally a win. On the other hand, I was like, I literally have nothing else. Like, I have no other job. I have precisely enough money to make this one movie. I could keep reading scripts, but I can't make them. There's like nothing.
This is it. This is my one shot.
Yeah, it's like, so I guess. So Adrienne and I mean, we said yes, and we took the next 6 months and like talked and talked and talked.
Did you consider going with another actress?
Yeah, there were moments. I found, it's funny because everything was like handwritten and very analog back then. I found like my lists that I made when I was like, well, I don't know if it can't be Keri, like, who is it? But we were like, this 6 months isn't that long, like it's okay. We can do this. It felt long a few times, and, but it gave us time runway to cast the other roles, and it gave us a lot of time to, I mean, when I say we talked, it was like, we just get on the phone and just like chat about the movie and about stuff daily. And it did get to the point where it allowed for us, it's something that I've tried to have happen on other sets, where like we really could look from across the room and be like, she like looks at a prop pie, and our props people were wonderful. They did so much with all those pies, but some of them were not exactly what she envisioned. And she could just look at it, look at me. I was like, I'll be right back. And,
Yes.
Drive with the props guy to the supermarket, go get new marshmallows. And like, we're making a new marshmallow mermaid pie right now.
That's amazing. And, it's something that I've noticed a lot that we've lost a little bit in this Zoom era is you don't have that time to really get to know your filmmaker and your crew and really like kind of have a mind meld.
Yeah.
The great movies are often the ones that were pushed for one reason or another. And there was just a little bit of an extra time to really figure things out. So I love hearing that.
Yeah, I have long believed that was a huge benefit for us. In addition to me being so green and naive that I was like, whoa, whatever, we can do anything, and look, I make fun of it, but I also came at things from the way that, and I still do, how I genuinely believe, I don't know, good things get made, which is the answer. In this case, the answer to creative is always yes. Right. And my job is to figure out how we get that yes. And I don't know, it could be, there's a lot of different ways something can go, but that ultimately, that sort of culture of no that we live in making these things, especially in lower budgets, is death, I think.
100%. And I love the idea that like if a pie wasn't right, you were going with the prop guy to the market and making it right yourself. Like I found also in my early career, I was sometimes still am, but like I was really that kind of producer too, who was just like, I'm here for whatever it is, and I'm going to make sure that the problem gets solved. And it's like that enthusiasm and that sort of innocence that allows you to have that, like that energy to fix all those little things. So, and it does matter, those things. Like I did notice the colorful marshmallows thought they were great.
Well, it's funny actually that you say that, because that's the other thing that, I say the no's are death. The other thing that is death, especially on a small indie, is that thing when people go, well, if they're paying attention to that, then you've already lost them. And it's like, no, I want them to pay attention to all of it. Like, like that's the whole point. It's not, nothing is like, oh, this doesn't matter. It all matters.
Baby, don't you cry. Gonna make a pie. Gonna make a pie with a heart in the middle. Baby, don't be blue. Gonna make for you. Gonna make a pie with a heart in the middle.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.
So you cast Keri, who I absolutely adore and love. Thought she was so perfect. You cast the rest of the cast. Did Adrienne always know she was going to play that part? Did she write it like with that in mind?
I can only give you my answer, which is I didn't know. She told me she didn't, wasn't necessarily interested in being in the movie. And then we auditioned a lot of people for Dawn, like a lot of people, some great people. I remember, like Melanie Linsky came in a bunch of times. She was so good. And she's like so good. And Adrienne always had like one reason or another where she's like, no, that was great. and it became clear that, that she wanted to do it. And there was, there were different camps because there were other people involved. We had some exec producers and whatnot who were like, well, it's a lot. She wrote, she's directing. And I had a conversation with her where I was like, I'm going to be honest. I don't feel this way, but I need to voice this because all of the people who were tasked with advising me are telling me that I'm being wrong. And she got pretty upset. She's like, would someone tell Woody Allen? I mean, I remember her specifically saying, would someone tell Woody Allen that he can't be in the movie? And I was like, I mean, I wouldn't, but it's like, no, I'm sure there's someone who at some point maybe, stupidly said. And so we had this conversation. Then she was out in LA and we had this there was like we're going to look at a couple people more closely. And we had this long conversation, the two of us, where we were walking around the parking lot where we had our production office at the lot, at Formosa and Santa Monica, I guess. And we just walked around this parking lot, I don't know, must have been an hour of us like pacing around this lot, talking about like, okay, so here's what it looks like. And she's like, and I'm going to want you to be my eyes and ears when I'm on there. And I was like, you trust me? Like, what? And one of the things that I've said this before in these kind of conversations, and I think it all the time, of like, I will never know why she trusted me, or at least pretended, enough to. And it's the big question that there are a lot of things I'd want to do if I could bring her back. But if I that's the one where I'm like, why would you ever think that I had a clue? So many people I've worked with are like, you don't have a clue. She was just so empowering. That's the way she handled everyone. It wasn't unique to me, but always made everyone feel like they brought something to the table, that they were valuable.
Okay, so keep taking me through like your memories, and so you're 6 months later, you're sort of up and running. Where do you guys decide to shoot?
So we were always going to shoot in LA. Now that I say that out loud, this may be the only time in the 20 years, this might be the only time I've actually answered this of like, I have no idea why we were shooting in LA. Besides that, I lived here and was like, this is where you make a movie.
It wasn't like you were scoping out the various tax credits.
No, we had no tax credits. She was living in New York, LA made sense to me. And I should say, in the interest of full disclosure, of the like 16 movies I've produced, 14 and a half, I think, have shot in the greater Los Angeles area. So, my whole thing was always, I think it's a better pitch to cast that they get to go home at night. I think we have some of the best crews in the world, and they're great crews. I shot up in Vancouver, and they were awesome, awesome people there. But they're really great crews here, especially like young crews who are, eager for the opportunity because we didn't have the money. So that was always the idea. So we scouted. We were like, well, where do we find, what looks like the South? And and honestly, there was this element.
I mean, legitimately, I thought you shot in the South.
That
You
means
guys did a great job. You really did a great job.
It was a lot of looking in a single direction. It was a lot of avoiding palm trees and things like that. Things that honestly now we would be more careless about. We'd just paint them out later or do something. We were sort of nuts about it. Like, well, if that's in that shot, that's in that shot. Period.
Right. That's going to live there.
Yeah. And so it was. We were really specific.
So where did you actually, like, what neighborhoods did you shoot in?
We were up in Santa Clarita and Canyon Country, and
okay.
we did a little bit in South Pasadena, and that was the bulk of it. That really is the bulk.
But where did you find those like dirt roads and stuff?
That was all up in Canyon Country and Santa Clarita.
Okay.
But we found this diner. We've been looking for diners, and we found this diner that was perfect. But it was shot a lot. It was filmed a lot. And so we were a little nervous about that, and then became more nervous because the man who owned it sort of knew that and was not always super pleasant. So we made a reasonably good deal. And then like halfway in the middle of it, he started to shake us down for more money. This is a story I actually don't remember well because it's been so long. I just remember the feelings of it and him yelling at me like what was the show? It was like some big network television show. And he's like, well, I told them that they, like if they didn't pay me, they were shut down. And I was like, well, I again was naive enough to be like, I'll fight. Like, well, I guess they're not as tough as I am. So, and we did. We sort of stood up to the bully and got her, I don't mean I'm sure he's not listening to this. But yeah, we found that. And so then we started to look around there because it was a 20-day shoot. It was a tight schedule. So,
sure. You can't be like driving hours each day.
No, there were we're not having a bunch of company moves. So it was, what could we find that was nearby? And we found some great stuff.
What else do you remember about prep in the shoot that like kind of stood out? Was it particularly hot? Was everyone pleasant? I mean, or was it really just one of those things where it's your first time and you don't realize how great it is until it's over kind of thing?
There was a lot of the latter there. I will say the one thing, because I always say that thing of like, my job is to produce whatever that person needs. I often reference on set, Adrienne developed some dental pain. It turned out she needed a root canal. And so I produced for her legally painkillers. And, it was all, we got her proper prescription. Everything was on the up and up. And then found an oral surgeon that worked on weekends. And so she like powered through for another, couple days. And then I sat with her at the, in the waiting room. And I was like, there were a few times in my career where I was like, I genuinely do not understand what's happening right now. And that was one.
And so talk to me about just the entire inspiration of the movie and the pies from her perspective. Like, was she a pie maker? Like, what was it that sort of drove this metaphor? And
she wasn't much of a pie baker. And when we were, and on set, our caterer kept having pie for dessert. And both of us were like, how do we break it to him that we're kind of cake people?
Yeah.
Like 10 days in, we're like, hey.
He's like, I'll take this as a theme. And you're like, oh, no one likes
Patrick,
pie.
like, is there any way, do you know how to make brownies? But yeah, so, but my understanding, one of the things she had said to me was she was at House of Pies on the East Side. And that was like one of the things that hit her of like, oh, this place is just like they just make all these pies. And she wanted everything to be, it's interesting. She wanted everything to be so timeless and so sort of non-specific. For all the specificity we were talking about, there was this, she wanted to have this fairy tale quality. And so there was, I remember being asked like, okay, so what Southern accent, like what dialect are we looking for? Where, tell me geographically where this is.
Yes.
And I went to her because we had like a coach for a minute that was working with, some of the actors. And she was like, well, no, just generic Southern. And I was like, I don't know that there is generic Southern, but I'll go back. Yeah, I'll go back with that. And it was the same with everything. It was like, it wasn't a time. It wasn't a place.
I guess that's true. So you never identify the actual place you're in or the time.
That's right. I mean,
so
it was obviously present day-ish, and it was the South. And I think the word Springfield came up.
Okay, so you got through the shoot. You're in the edit. Is it like naturally coming together again? You said you didn't delete any scenes, so it sort of felt like it was the script.
Well, so that was its own interesting thing too, because I hadn't done this before. And so I was taking my cues from her, and I said, we set it up so she was going to edit in New York, and I was LA based. And I said, well, so do you want me to like be out there, or, like, how do you want this to happen? Do you want me to come out every now and then? And, because again, different era, it wasn't like I couldn't just get a link. Like there was no, like you could FedEx me like a drive. It's like if I wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was not expecting it, but she was like, I want to just live out here. Like if you can live out here for a few months. And I was like, well, I don't have a family yet. Like I'm just like some dumb single guy. And so I moved to New York, got a furnished apartment. And again, not unlike the meetings with actresses, she was like, I just want a little bit of time myself. And this time she wasn't like, I need you to pretend that you're like you sleep in every day. She was just like, just come later in the morning. And so not that anyone cares about my, these 3 months were really,
we love it.
But I had this thing where I had nothing else to do. So besides like tying up some loose ends, paperwork and things like I had work on this film, but I would just have every morning like nothing to do. And so I would just go see a movie. Every morning I went to go see like a 10 a.m., whatever movies were out. So every movie over the course of, 3 months, it was the best. And then I would come and be in the edit room, and I always timed it so I'd come right after lunch so that we didn't have to pay for lunch.
So were you going to like film forum and stuff, not just like the big popular ones?
I was going anywhere I could find a movie I hadn't seen. And it was also like, I had never lived in New York. My mom's from New York, had spent a bunch of time in New York, but like had never been there. So it was also like, oh, there's what's that Lincoln Center Theater? I'll walk, I'm like staying down in the Village, and I was like, I'll walk all the way there so that I can see like I was like learning this city. So it was very romantic and lovely. It was cool.
You must love thinking about that time so much. It must have been such like an amazing.
It was wild. And I learned so much from Adrienne in it. It like, I don't know, I keep saying this stuff about her. I don't mean to sound ridiculous, but it just was like, I don't know. There was a lot. There was a lot.
Such a special relationship. It's like rare to really create that bond between filmmaker and producer, I think.
Yeah.
It's really, really amazing, Michael. So, okay. So you go in and she's very inclusive of you right away. Are you like, this is in good shape?
Well, so it's interesting because she was like, I want a couple weeks before you get here, and then I want mornings. And so she cut together a little bit. And, and she's hands-on, like she's really hands-on. Right. And like Annette Davey, our editor, who's wonderful, was like, I haven't really had this before where the director sits next to me, like at the desk with the Avid, pulls out a script and is like, all right, let's go. But that's how Adrienne is. And the first thing she showed me was the that montage with the smile with the cake song playing underneath it.
Yes. Short
skirt.
Where she's like in love and she's actually enjoying life for the first time.
And she shows it to me and I was like, pretty weird. Like, like, this is great, but it's like, this is super weird. And like, so I have like all of these things.
Such a like intense smile. Like, it's so plastered on her face. It's so
wild.
interesting.
And especially out of context. And I remember Keri doing it on set and being like, is this too weird? And Adrienne being like, it's not too weird. Like, I promise you. And so she shows me this and I'm sitting there and she's watching me watch it. Like, like it happens a lot, but this was like, I am being scrutinized right now for my reaction to this.
God.
And like,
oh my God.
I felt like everything is going, like, I can either ruin our relationship right now. Like, I have no idea what to do.
Totally. And also, you're like experiencing all sorts of things, I'm sure, as your producer. You're like, I don't know how this fits into the overall. Like, this is a really weird choice. It's a choice.
Exactly that.
Choice.
And the other thing I'm thinking of is I've heard this song, which means necessarily that we cannot afford it. I was like, if I have ever heard the song before, this is a big problem.
You're just like, your alarm bells are going off. Yeah. We don't have the budget for
like,
this.
Is she insane?
Oh my God.
I was like, what am I going to do? That's our entire music budget right there.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
But I will say, it was one of the things that never changed at all. I mean, like, at all. And so, and that was the way things happen. There were things where, like, we would joke around that sometimes I'd give a note and she'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. And then come in the next morning and go, I had this idea. And you're like, yeah, I know that idea. but that's cool. And I learned that, like, that's how you give notes.
Meaning like, she would take in your note, reject it, and then think about it. And then it was her idea.
Yeah,
totally.
And she was great. And she was very nice about it. It was like, but it was, and I realized, like, oh, there is this thing where you sort of like incept the, like, I don't know, there's this
planting a seed. Like, I try to do that more and more rather than giving really out and out notes these days. Like, I'll submit I always give my notes. And then sometimes I see the director sort of starting to inch in a direction, and then I'll plant another like breadcrumb. And then suddenly it's like, then that's becomes the direction. And for me, I'm like, that's a win.
Yes.
Like, if the director can own that and really process it and make it their own, then like everyone's winning,
One of my favorite things about being a producer is like standing in the back of a theater or being somewhere where you hear people talking about something and you don't matter. Like, it's not about me, but that you had something to do with this and you helped get it there. It's like such a great feeling of like, I don't need it to be me. I need to know that I got a chance to, do it.
Earl murders me because I'm having an affair pie. You smash blackberries and raspberries into a chocolate crust. I can't have no affair because it's wrong, and I don't want Earl to kill me pie. Vanilla custard with banana. Hold the banana.
Okay, so you're getting through the edit. She's finding your way. You're right there with her through the whole thing. Where are you guys when you decide to submit to Sundance? Was that always the plan?
It was sort of always the plan. The truth is, we had a difficult road. We picture locked and we loved what we had. And we'd shown it. We'd done those like family and friends screenings. And everyone's like, this is so great. And, and you're like, oh, yeah, of course it is. We thought it was great too.
I have a masterpiece.
And the only thing we didn't have was music. And so I left. I went back to LA and she was there finishing music for a few weeks. And like it wasn't working. And she calls me and was like, I don't know, I can't figure this out. And I said to her, would you want me to come back to New York right now? But saying it like a parent says to their child, like, do I have to come up there or something? Like it was like a threat. It wasn't like I wasn't saying it well-meaning. And she was like, yes, that would be great. and so we had submitted to Toronto at this point and like hadn't figured out with a bunch of temp music. And so and we got into this argument about the music. It was like the one really big argument we had. But it was the night that we then recorded the Pie song. And so like we were like not really talking to each other and went look at each other and we're in this elevator and she like comes over and gives me a hug. I'm I'm melting right now, but I still think we're arguing. And so with that, we didn't get into Toronto with this temp music, but we were like, I don't know, maybe it's because like the movie wasn't really finished. This is like a, whatever. And then we start to show
Was the temp music just to like, because I'm so interested in how music impacts a viewer, an audience's reaction. Was the temp music very different from where you landed ultimately?
No, no, probably not. I mean, it was different in the sense that they were different cues. The Cake song was in there, but no, I don't think tonally. I don't think the film was drastically different. But I definitely told myself like, well, it's not. I remember I used to, when we'd submit things, would write these notes about like, this isn't final color and this isn't fun. Even when it was final color, I used to write that on things. So I was like, well, let them think that this isn't even as good as it could possibly. It's going to be so much
totally
than this. I think everyone sees through it, but so we started showing it to sales reps, and no one wanted it. Like they didn't want to represent it.
Wow.
And so we're like, we hadn't gotten into Toronto. I guess Sundance is like the next, one. We'll submit to that, but we had this screening for a couple of reps who will remain nameless for now, but who we were in the Adikoff screening room, and old Charlie Adikoff was there, like literally putting the, because it was a film print, and he comes out afterwards and he's like, it's a good movie. And the agent was like, yeah, and he's like, you're gonna make a lot of money off this movie. And the agent was like, oh, I don't know. And I called Adrienne from outside, and I was like, all right, so here's the thing. I don't know what this means, but like the old guy who's seen all of the movies thinks the movie's good. Yes. So if nothing else, there is one older gentleman who has watched a lot of movies who agrees with me and you that this thing might be okay.
Sometimes you have to take those signs because they're all you're getting.
All you're getting. And everyone was negative. And we showed it to this consultant, who I also won't name. But he goes, if you don't cut the first 15 minutes of this film, it will never see the inside of a theater.
Oh, my God.
So that was the night before Adrienne passed away. So I called Adrienne with this information. I said, we had this screening that we were talking about today, and it was bad. And the guy thinks the movie's slow and boring, and the first 15 minutes don't make sense, and it's totally a different film, and it needs to come out. And she said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I don't think that that's true. I think this guy's a moron. and I said, but what do you think we should do? Because we hadn't gotten into Toronto. Now we also people were saying they weren't willing to represent it. And I was like, oh God, like this seems bad. I haven't done this before. And one agent, who will also remain nameless, was like mean about it. That person was like, I didn't call you back for a week. We screened it for them. And they were like, I didn't call you back for a week because truth is I hate this. And I didn't know how to say that to you. And I was like, like in LA, someone would like, usually no one's blunt like
they lie. They're just like, it's not for us. It's
Oh, we've got something else like that. It's going to be a busy slate. We have a big slate. I don't know. We have all these pie movies.
Totally, come up with some sort of lie, you jerk.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
At any rate, so I called her, and she said, "Well, at some point we have to start listening to people." And I also was like, well, we can't re-edit it. I don't have any money left. Like this, not only do I believe in this movie, but like I have to, because this is it. This is all we got. And she goes, well, why don't we wait to see what happens with Sundance? And if we don't get into Sundance, I think we do have to have this conversation. And I was like, that makes sense. If we don't get into Sundance, let's have this is a real conversation. We'd be stupid if we're not listening to everyone. And she said, why don't we talk tomorrow? But I think that's, let me sleep up. I think that's where I am. I was like, great, we'll talk tomorrow. And we didn't talk the next day.
Was that unusual?
Yes and no. We went through certainly periods where we didn't, after I was a jerk about the music that time, we didn't speak as often for a few days. And I don't know, it's like, I'm the kind of person who for most of my life speaks to my mom every day. But then there are times where like, I don't know, I was busy.
Totally, same. You go like all of a sudden it's been like 2 weeks.
Oh shoot! Like what happened? Yeah, and so, but I didn't really think of it except like that night. I was like, shoot, the 3-hour time difference. I was like, by the time I realized, I was like, well, I can't call her now. She's got a husband and a kid. I can't be an idiot. So, the next morning I woke up. I always wake up early, but I woke up really early, and I had this email from her husband. It was like, call me, and this stuff is all such a blur, but basically he told me that she had passed away and was asking me if we'd heard something from Sundance. And I was like, that's a weird thing to ask me. And then I realized that what had happened was it had been staged to look like she'd taken her own life. And so he was being asked by police detectives if she had gotten bad news, if something bad had happened. And I was like, we talked about it at some point later, and both he and I were like, I mean, there is literally nothing Sundance could say that would have changed. Like she just wasn't how her mind worked. I mean, honestly, the conversation that we had that day before was, look, I don't know that we're going to get into Sundance. The truth is, I don't know that people get my movies. I don't know that those, I don't want to say that she said those people, but whatever term she used, it was like programmers and indie, she's like, I have this weird mix where it's like sort of commercial and sort of artsy, and like it's not necessarily for the commercial people and it's not necessarily for the art film people. And I don't know that anyone will ever get it. And I was like, well, I get it. It's good. It's like, I promise you it's good.
Yes.
At any rate, so then, that happened. And that was, this many years later, I still have not processed any of it. I always think she's just really bad at calling me. Like, I'm like, God, it's been like 18 years. You should call once.
Oh my God. I can't believe it's been 18 years, Michael.
It has been, well, that's probably, no, I guess that's probably right. That was 2000. Oh God. Yeah. It's been a long time.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That must have just devastated the entire process. But then you guys get into Sundance. Like, yeah. I can't believe
it was nuts, because this was, it was a few weeks before you would normally hear from Sundance that she's just passed away. And we hear from, I heard it through Annette originally, our editor, because she was friends with a programmer, and was like, and then I heard it from someone else who's friends with other programmers, what was being messaged to us was, you were in, and I can't believe we didn't tell you somehow. Like, I can't believe she doesn't know. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy. This is crazy. And now I was tasked with this very strange sprint. I mean, it's always a sprint when you get a film into Sundance. My other films that have gone there, or any festival, but I've felt that sprint. But this was this sprint in a fog that was just wild, where we were all dealing with crazy emotions, but then also trying to kind of handle the logistics of frankly, some of the emotions, figuring out like, well, so is her whole family coming? Who's going to be where? How do I get enough tickets for everyone? I can't have anyone feel what's going to happen if press asks them this thing or that thing and no one can talk to you. And you're just like managing all this stuff. And we still didn't have a sales rep, and Andrew Hurwitz saw it and was like, yeah, I like this movie. And I was like, well, so I'm still I'm trying to, like pretend like I'm a producer. So I'm like, well, so why should we go with you? Well, the reason I should go with you is you're literally the only person who wants the movie. But, he said to me, it stuck with me forever. He goes, well, I've got a couple kids in private schools in New York. I need to sell the movie. I said, all right.
Sometimes the truth just really hits home.
I appreciate that. And we got the most wonderful publicist, Jeremy Walker. And
I remember him. He was the best. He was so thoughtful and just smart and
genius. I mean, an absolute genius. I had no idea then. And he got me this. I was in LA about to go to Sundance, like had all my stuff sort of, we've got all the tickets, we've got everyone ready. And Andy, Adrienne's husband, is sort of, okay, he's okay. And we're I mean, not okay, but we've got everything covered. And Jeremy calls me, goes, when are you going to Park City? And I was like, I don't know, Thursday or whatever it was. He goes, I need to go. Can you be there tonight? And I was like, I don't have clean socks. No. Actually, today was the laundry day. Like, I don't know, man. And he's like, well, the New York Times wants to run this piece. David Carr wants to. And so he goes, and the only time it can happen, like, you got to go there, you got to screen the movie for him, and
oh my God,
and then he'll interview you. And I was like, okay. And so I like literally drove to like the Gap and bought socks, because I was like, I don't have time. And so I got to Sundance. We go have this very strange dinner. It's me and him, and we go watch the movie. we're watching a movie in this like condo that I'd rented. I was able to get into it a day early because I guess people don't really rent those couple days before Sundance. I was like, oh, could I possibly rent it for another day? And the guy's like, yes, of course you can, sir. So we watched this movie and he's like talking during it. And I was like, oh, you can't talk. Talk during the movie. You go watch the movie.
Totally.
Then afterwards he goes, so what was the budget of the movie? And so I don't tell anyone that. And he goes, well, I'm not writing your fucking fluff piece for the New York Times. So why don't you come up with another answer? And leaves. And I immediately called Jeremy Walker. It's like late in New York as I calling and leaving messages, but just call me anytime you wake up, just call me. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Like, I think I offended the New York Times right now. And I was like, what do I say? And he's like, oh, don't worry, honey. Like, it's going to be fine. I'll call. And what do you want to say? And I was like, I don't know. I want to not give a number. And he's like, well, why don't I say like it's less than a pre-war apartment on the, like, and I was like, I have no idea what that means. So that sounds fine to me. So he did that. And we had this really, really nice piece in the Times that came out. God. But I was sweating it. I was white knuckling that.
But suddenly, like, sort of lauding Adrienne as a voice, and like, was it a larger piece about her and her art and her?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically like, this is a crazy situation that's happening right now, and these people are here, honoring her memory, and this movie is a testament to it. And I will say, the one thing that was so much easier as a producer, I didn't realize, was because we were all pulling together, and everyone wanted to be there, and everyone cared so much, and was so devastated. Dealing with people's schedules and travel and logistics, it was like, I don't have money for your flights. I don't these are the days you need to be there. Everyone was like, no problem. I'll see you.
People were like, we're here for it.
Yeah, everyone was great. Everyone came together in a way that was amazing.
We got this new baby here. Shouldn't be making jokes like that.
I want you the hell out of my life. You are never to touch me ever again. I am done with you. If you ever come within 6 yards of me, I will flatten your sorry ass and I will enjoy doing it.
Well, congratulations, you're definitely having a baby.
Thank you.
I mean, that's just such an incredible tale. And then I know you guys premiered at the Eccles and had one of those magical screenings, right?
It was bonkers. So it was, I had no idea. I'd been to Sundance once before, but not with a movie, obviously. And, the electricity in the room was nuts. And then Jeremy comes up to me afterwards with this like running list of reactions from critics that were all very positive. And
wow.
And I was stunned. And Andrew Hurwitz says to me, he goes, we're not selling it tonight. I said, what do you mean we're not selling it tonight? Like, isn't that the whole thing? Like, it's, we sell it overnight.
Jammy Jam, let's go late night. Yeah.
And he's like, we're not selling it tonight. There weren't a lot of decision makers in the room, but this buzz is great. They'll be there. I already know that people are coming back to tomorrow's screening. Like, it's just not happening tonight. We had a dinner for like cast and crew that were there. And he was like, cool. Well, enjoy the dinner. Just like enjoy yourself. It's going to be fine. And we're at dinner and in walk 3 people from Samuel Goldwyn films. And they were like, can we talk to whoever we need to talk to? We'd like to make an offer. And I was like, they won. See, Andrew, we are selling it tonight. He's like, he's like, honey, we're not selling it tonight. I was like, we might. I was like, you don't know. I was like, we'll see. So they sit down and they offer us something that I was like, whoa, like that. Oh my God. And, he's like, gripping my thigh under the table, being like, idiot. Please don't.
Yeah.
Like,
keep it close to the chest, man.
I'm like, yeah, no, I mean,
play it cool.
I don't know. And so they leave and he goes, we're still not selling it tonight. And then he gets a call from Searchlight and he comes back and he goes, we might be selling it tonight. And he goes, they offered this. And so we started negotiating with them and they're, put someone else into the mixer briefly. And, at about midnight, we're in the Java Cow, the ice cream, place up at the top of Main.
Sure. Yeah. No, well.
There, and we're like negotiating this thing back and forth over phone calls. His phone.
In the Java Cow?
Yeah, in Java Cow. I had nowhere else to go. I don't know where we were. So, and our lawyer, Erwin Rappaport, is nowhere to be found. And
oh my God.
And I can't, not picking up his phone. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. And Andrew and I it's like midnight. They kick us out of Java. They're like, we're closing, guys. Like, you can't be here anymore. And he needs to plug in his phone. So we go back to his hotel and we're in the lobby, like plugged in. And finally, Erwin calls, but he's like, I've been at a party in some basement like on Main Street. Like, he's definitely like a little drunk, maybe.
Couple drinks.
Yeah.
Couple drinks.
And he's like, oh, come pick me up. So it's become clear now we're going with Searchlight. We pick Erwin up on the way. We go to the Searchlight condo in like Deer Valley. It's now like 3 a.m, 4 a.m, and we're negotiating these final last things. And the only place they had for us to talk without them sitting there in front of us was this one little bedroom that had enough room for like a bed. So the 3 of us are like laying on this bed discussing this together. And we get to sort of the deal's basically, it's almost 100% done. And Andrew decides he wants to be a hero. And so he starts asking for things. And I'm like the kid who's embarrassed by his parents being like, we got to get out of here. Like, drop me off around the corner. No one can see you. I don't want, like,
yes.
And he's like,
I'm not with you. Yeah.
Oh my God. And he goes, can we get sequel rights? Tony Stafford from Fox goes, do you know how much we're paying you? You can't have sequel rights. And he goes, okay, that's fine. Can we get maybe TV remake rights? You can't have TV remake rights. Can we carve out the soundtrack? We'd love to carve it. You can't have the soundtrack. We were thinking about putting out a cookbook, no cookbook. And then Andrew goes, how about live stage rights? And Tony Stafford looks him in the eyes, looks at me, looks at him and goes, if I give you the fucking stage rights, do you promise to stop asking me for shit? And I was like, yes, we promise. We're good. We're all set. We're good.
That is wild.
Nuts, right? Completely nuts. And the next morning I wake up, I slept for like 3 hours and we have this like press thing the next morning. And I was like, we hung on for stage rights? Like what? How stupid was that?
That's what we got.
Yeah,
that's the cherry.
Yeah, glad we got
like
those.
In what world? In what world does an independent Sundance film become one of the most successful Broadway shows in the last 20 years?
In what world? Been a wild ride. Was not something I expected.
Oh my God. That is so incredible. But why do you think this little movie that you and Adrienne put on your backs has resonated and like stuck around and become the sort of thing that it has? What can you attribute that to?
There's a lot of heart in it. Adrienne, she touched on something. It was ahead of its time. There's certainly a lot of themes that I think are so resonant now that they weren't really what we were talking about then as much, and I've always thought that was amazing. But then, the musical lives on its own too. There's so much that Adrienne imbued it with that I think is part of the magic. But then what Sarah Bareilles did, like I've always said, Sarah understood Adrienne's vision for that as well as anyone other than Adrienne, and maybe even better than Adrienne. There are times where I'm like, I don't even think Adrienne realized Adrienne meant that. That's so, you're so on the nose with this stuff. And then Jesse Nelson, who wrote the book too, just like got it. We went through a number of book writers, and the reality was Jesse didn't let her ego get in the way of like, I need to make this enough different. She did make her mark. Yeah, there's a lot that's hers, but she didn't have to like, I don't know, it wasn't a game. She was able to use the source material too. And so,
yes,
I don't know. I think it was a team, and everyone who has ever come onto this thing, I always say to them, you're now part of the Waitress family. There is no way to escape. I'm proof that you actually never get to leave. You get to come in, but you never get to come out. And it has been that way. And people take it on in a way that, I've worked on a lot of other films and other projects. This one stands on its own in that for some reason it resonates, and including with the people who are making it and working on it.
Well, what I was struck by is that it's a feminist anthem, sort of Trojan horsed in a romance.
Yep.
Like a rom-com.
Totally.
And the message at the end is not that the like handsome doctor's going to save your life. It's this like staring into your daughter's eyes and knowing that you're stronger than you thought you are. I mean, it makes me want to cry. And I was just like, fuck yeah. Like that is such a like great message, like in the Umbrellas of Cherbourg ending, and like, I loved it. I really, really appreciated it so much more. And just understanding Adrienne and her legacy, and hats off to you for seeing that when very few people did. Like, of course, every sales agent told you no, of course, like that was the journey on your path to like extreme success. I hope you're a billionaire for like taking the shot on this movie. It brought me such joy to rewatch it. I introduced it to my 2 daughters. They're obsessed with it now. And
how old are they?
15 and 17.
See, I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're not quite obsessed with it yet. But I'm hoping one day.
Someday.
Yeah.
Michael, it has been such a joy to talk to you. I can't thank you enough for doing this. Will you come back and talk about the Broadway show?
Of course, I'd love to. This was really fun. Thanks for taking me down this trip down memory lane. This is great.
Such a good storyteller, and like it was so fun to share experiences with you. So I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Michael Roiff, what a storyteller. He's such a like genuinely good human being, it seems, and works so hard. I love getting into conversations with people like that because it really is so enjoyable, and you're just sharing experiences, and it feels like you're both in it for the right reasons, and like you're both working so hard just to make great work. And he really left it all on the table for like this amazing filmmaker who is now no longer with us. It's just a crazy story.
The whole thing is insane. And even just kind of starting from when he decided to move to LA and was just like, I'm going to be a film producer. I think I can do this. And I do think like something that's constantly missing in people in this industry is that energy of just like, go do it. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. And you can execute something if you're clever enough and if you know how to talk to people and you're resourceful enough. And it's very inspiring. It's amazing what he was able to accomplish. And obviously it ended in such an incredibly tragic way, but obviously the movie has continued to do so well. It's kind of amazing like how this small little movie really is such an epic story.
I mean, I think that is so inspiring. I think Adrienne Shelly was sort of like an artist that was overlooked for a very long time. And I just love that she had her proper due eventually because she really was so talented. And this movie does have so many unique qualities to it that it has a sweetness, but also an edge to it. And there's like a fairy tale component to it, but also a feminist anthem in a way. And I really loved how she blended all those things together and like the metaphors of the pies. And I loved it.
I mean, it is ultimately like, it's a reverse romantic comedy. It's a fairy tale, really. It's like a reverse fairy tale that kind of ends in like a feminist way, which is really amazing. But I think that it kind of sucks you in with this premise of like, this woman's in a bad situation and she's going to fall in love with this doctor who's going to sweep her off her feet. But it's so much more than that. And I think it seems so simple, but they did such smart things with making it feel so quirky and making it feel so sweet, and like using pie throughout the whole thing. It just felt like so original in a way that I think would be really hard to pitch. Like I could see how someone would, even if you watch the movie, being like, I have no idea how this is going to land. Like maybe people will like this. I think ultimately like a traditional story, which is what makes people love it so much, but it's not packaged in a way that feels conventional. And I think that must have been really hard.
It's just shocking to me that became one of the highest grossing independent films of the year, I mean, it wasn't like there weren't like any big stars in it.
It's crazy.
It's about like a girl who gets pregnant, like working in a diner,
For me, Keri Russell, I love her so much.
Oh my God, she can do no wrong.
She can do no wrong.
She's so funny and great. I love Keri Russell too. But we're going to do a follow-up on the musical, which was like a big hit on Broadway, and talk to Michael about how that all came to be, because that is like a totally foreign process to us, right? Like we've dabbled in Broadway a little bit and put a little money into The Outsiders and kind of started to understand the process, but that is a whole other animal. And I am so excited to understand how that process happened and how they came to create such a like iconic, incredible musical out of this little independent hit. So
it's an unbelievable story, and it's kind of crazy because I actually really love that musical.
Yeah.
I'm very critical of all these Broadway shows, but I really do. That one's charming.
So good. Anyways, that was so fun, so great. to hear that story. It's so incredible. And let's do the wrap up.
All right, guys. Follow us on Instagram at Hollywood Gold Pod. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And please buy our merch. You can go to staygoldfeatures.com and hit the merch tab. We have some great t-shirts and sweatshirts as always. So stay gold, guys.
Don't forget to stay gold.